I am a devil, but I mean to be a god.
Hey everyone, welcome back to your nerdy show. I'm your host, Spoiler Master. So, let's be honest for a second. When you think of Skeletor, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Probably a ripped, blue-skinned guy with a bare skull for a face, shaking his Havoc staff and screaming about how much he absolutely hates He-Man, right? He's the ultimate, iconic, cackling 80s cartoon villain. His entire life's mission is just to kick down the doors of Castle Grayskull, steal its ancient secrets, and rule the universe. Standard bad guy stuff. But what if I told you that the brutal, never-ending war for Eternia isn't just a battle between good and evil? What if it's actually the most dysfunctional, chaotic, and downright tragic family reunion in the history of fantasy fiction? Yeah, you heard me right. Skeletor isn't just He-Man's arch-nemesis. He's his uncle. Mind-blowing, right? When you actually sit down and map out the royal bloodline of Eternia, you realize that almost every single major player in this universe is related to the Lord of Destruction. We are talking about an ancient lineage filled with legendary kings, secret affairs, dark magic, forbidden romances, and a son hidden away in the future who wears a skull mask just to make his dad proud. It is wild. So today, we are going to dive deep into the ultimate Skeletor family tree. We'll break down every single member, uncover their crazy backstories, and figure out how a royal prince of Eternia ended up losing his face and becoming the most feared sorcerer in the cosmos. Grab a drink, get comfortable, and let's get into it. The ancient roots, King Grayskull and Vina. To understand how Skeletor's family became so messed up, we have to travel thousands of years into the past, long before Snake Mountain was even a thing. We need to look at the literal foundation of Eternia's power, King Grayskull himself. Now, King Grayskull was an absolute unit of a man. He was the original protector of the planet, ruling with massive amounts of wisdom, compassion, and honestly, just sheer muscle. He rode around on a giant, armored mount called Battle Lion, and alongside his brilliant wife, Queen Vina, he defended the realm from the absolute worst threats imaginable. We're talking about the terrifying Snake Men and, of course, the evil Horde, led by the galactic tyrant Hordak. But here's how the tragic cycle of this family truly begins. During this massive, apocalyptic battle right outside the gates of what would become Castle Grayskull, Hordak realized he couldn't win. So, he tried to open up a massive reality-tearing portal to a nightmare dimension called Despondos, planning to suck the entire planet into the void.
King Grayskull wasn't having it. In a final, desperate act of heroism, he used every single ounce of his life force to flip the script. He turned the portal against Hordak, trapping the villain and his army inside Despondos, saving Eternia, but sacrificing his own life in the process. But he didn't just die. As he was passing, Grayskull transferred all of his remaining magical, mystical energies straight into his power sword. That sword became the anchor for all the magic on the planet. His wife, Vina, became the very first sorceress to guard it. His closest advisors became the Council of Elders, and they all dedicated their lives to protecting his legacy. This is why, millenniums later, Prince Adam raises that very same sword and yells, "By the power of Grayskull." It's a literal tribute to his ancient ancestor. So, the bloodline starts with the ultimate hero. How on earth did it produce the ultimate villain? Well, that brings us to the next generation. Let's talk about Skeletor's parents.
I haven't seen my son or anyone for years, but who are you?
The father, King Miro's secret legacy. Fast forward a few thousand years, and we meet King Miro. Now, if you grew up on the classic 1983 Filmation cartoon, you might remember Miro as this kindly, older king who mysteriously disappeared at sea, leaving the throne to his son, Randor. Simple, clean, family-friendly storytelling. But if you dive into the darker, more complex comic book lore, specifically the DC Comics run from the mid-2010s, Miro's backstory gets incredibly messy. It turns out King Miro wasn't exactly a perfect ruler. Years before he married the woman who would give birth to King Randor, Miro crashed his ship onto a mysterious island. On this island, he met a powerful, enigmatic witch named Saryn. Now, Saryn used her magic to make Miro fall head over heels in love with her. And from that magical, forbidden romance, a child was born, a baby boy named Keldor. For a little while, Miro actually brought Keldor back to the royal palace in Eternos. But, as you can probably guess, having a child born out of dark magic running around the royal court caused some serious political tension. Eventually, Miro made the heartbreaking decision to banish young Keldor to the remote island of Nwat. Can you imagine the psychological toll that would take on a kid? Sarin raised Keldor on that isolated island, constantly whispering in his ear, making sure he knew exactly what he was. A royal prince who had been stripped of his birthright, cast aside while his younger half-brother, Randor, got to live the pampered life of a future king. Talk about a recipe for a supervillain origin story. And the drama between Miro and Keldor didn't stop there. Later on, Saryn actually tried to trick Keldor into murdering Hordak by using an illusion to make Hordak look like a chained up, suffering King Miro on a wall. Keldor, who was already becoming incredibly sharp and cynical, didn't fall for the trick. He saw right through his mother's manipulation, showing that even back then, he wasn't a piece to be moved on a chessboard. The mother, Saryn's dark ambitions. Since we just mentioned her, we have to look a bit closer at Skeletor's mother, Saryn, because she is a fascinatingly dark character. If you look at the Blood of Grayskull storyline in the DC comics, and even the later Revolution comics from Dark Horse, Saryn is revealed to be a master manipulator working deep in the shadows. She wasn't just a scorned lover. She was actively trying to tear the royal family apart. She was manipulated herself by a dark entity named Adi to poison King Miro. And she even went so far as to murder her own two sisters just to steal their magical power for herself. She was playing a high-stakes game of cosmic chess, manipulating Hordak, manipulating her own son Keldor, all to seize ultimate power. It's actually left a bit ambiguous in the comics whether she survived her final encounters with Hordak and Keldor, but her impact on the family tree is undeniable. She took a young, half-royal boy who could have been a great defender of Eternia, and she filled his heart with pure, unadulterated venom, which leads us directly to the great tragedy of the half-brothers.
Captain Randor.
Please, forgive the intrusion. Keldor and his forces are moving on the capital.
The half-brother, King Randor, and the birth of a monster. So, while Keldor is stewing in exile on a distant island, King Miro disappears, and his other son, Randor, takes the throne. Randor is everything a fantasy king is supposed to be: brave, steadfast, and a legendary warrior in his own right. Back in the day, before he wore the crown, he was known across the planet as Captain Randor. Eventually, Keldor returns from exile, not as a brother looking for a hug, but as a warlord leading a massive faction of dark sorcerers and monsters during a brutal civil war known as the Great Unrest. Keldor wanted his throne, and he was willing to burn Eternia to the ground to get it. This all culminated in a legendary, fateful duel at the Hall of Wisdom. Keldor and Randor fought face to face in a brutal clash of swords. Realizing he was losing the fight, Keldor decided to play dirty. He pulled out a vial of highly corrosive, magical acid and hurled it right at Randor's face. But Randor's reflexes were too fast. He raised his shield at the absolute perfect second. The acid splashed off the shield and reflected right back onto Keldor, melting the flesh completely off his bones. Desperate to save his own life, Keldor fled into the dark, where he made a literal deal with the devil, Hordak, to bind his soul to his ruined body. Hordak saved him, but the process left him with a floating, disembodied, bare yellow skull for a head. Keldor was dead. Skeletor was born. Here is the craziest, most heartbreaking part of the whole thing. Depending on which continuity you look at, it's highly implied that Randor and Keldor never even knew they were half-brothers. They fought this world-shattering war, mutilated each other, and hated each other with a passion, completely blind to the fact that they shared the exact same royal blood.
Good evening, all of Eternia!
The forbidden romance, Evil-Lyn and the Next Generation. Now, you can't talk about Skeletor without talking about his second-in-command, the brilliant and dangerous Evil-Lyn. When she was introduced back in 1983, she was basically just designed to be the dark counterpart to Teela. The original toy even used the exact same body mold, just with yellow skin and a different head. But over the years, she became one of the deepest characters in the franchise. She is way smarter than any of Skeletor's other bumbling minions, like Beastman or Trapjaw. She openly admits she isn't as rawly powerful as Skeletor, but she fully intends to steal his magic and rule Eternia herself one day. They have this incredibly toxic, fascinating push-and-pull dynamic where they are constantly using each other for power. But in the expanded lore, their relationship actually goes much deeper than just evil co-workers. They were romantic. And out of that dark, toxic romance, a son was born. Meet Malkin, better known to the universe as Skeleteen. Skeleteen, son of the Skeletor. Yeah, I know. The name Skeleteen sounds like something straight out of a cheesy 90s cartoon, but his backstory is surprisingly wild. Because Evil-Lyn knew that raising a child around a maniac like Skeletor was a terrible idea, she actually used her magic to hide the boy far into the future. He was raised by an ancient sorcerer known as the Faceless One. Eventually, Malkin was reunited with a weakened Evil-Lyn, who taught him everything she knew about dark magic. Desperate for his father's approval and inspired by Skeletor's legacy, Malkin put on a skull mask of his own, took the name Skeleteen, and built a brand new army of evil warriors to fight against He-Man's successor, Prince Dare. But standard operating procedure for this family, Skeletor was a terrible father. When Skeleteen actually managed to use his magic to resurrect Keldor, Skeletor immediately went back to being an abusive, power-hungry jerk, driving his own son away. Realizing his parents were just using him as a pawn in their endless games, Skeleteen abandoned Snake Mountain, gathered a crew of rogue allies, and actually started using his dark powers to help people, forming a very shaky, reluctant alliance with the heroes, the niece and nephew, He-Man and She-Ra. This brings us right back to the heroes we all know and love, Prince Adam and Princess Adora. Since Skeletor is King Randor's half-brother, that makes him the direct half-uncle to He-Man and She-Ra. When you look at it through this lens, the entire Masters of the Universe franchise is basically just a giant cosmic custody battle over the legacy of their ancestor, King Grayskull. Think about Prince Adam's life. To the royal court of Eternos, he acts like a lazy, clumsy, shiftless playboy who runs away whenever danger shows up. His dad, King Randor, constantly sighs and wishes his son would take things seriously, completely unaware that Adam is secretly transforming into the most powerful man in the universe to protect the realm from his own long-lost uncle. And then you have Adora, Adam's twin sister. Her connection to the dark side of the family is even more personal. Right after the twins were born, Hordak, the guy who made Skeletor who he is, sneaked into the palace to kidnap them. He was caught in the act by Man-at-Arms, so he only managed to escape with baby Adora, stealing her away through a space corridor to the world of Eternia. Adora was raised by the Dark Witch Shadow Weaver and literally became a force captain for the evil Horde. She spent years fighting for the bad guys until she finally discovered her true destiny, claimed the Sword of Protection, and became She-Ra. So, both of Randor's kids spent their entire lives dealing with the direct fallout of the choices made by Skeletor and his dark mentors. It is just layers upon layers of generational trauma. The outsider, Queen Marlena. Finally, we have to talk about the woman caught right in the middle of all this magical madness, Queen Marlena. Marlena is such a cool anomaly in this family tree because she is the only member who isn't even from Eternia. She was originally Marlena Glenn, a brilliant top-tier NASA astronaut from Earth. During a high-stakes space mission, her ship malfunctioned, got thrown completely off course, and crash-landed on Eternia. Randor took her in. They fell deeply in love, and she decided to stay, becoming the queen consort of the planet. She brought an Earthling's perspective to a world dominated by swords and sorcery. And while King Randor is completely oblivious to the fact that his son is He-Man, Marlena has dropped multiple hints over the years that she knows exactly what Adam is doing. She's a mother. She recognizes her own kid, even when he's rocking a magic tan and a harness. Our nerdy thoughts. So let's look at the big picture. When you line it all up, the story of Masters of the Universe isn't just about a random skeleton guy wanting to blow up a castle. It's a multi-generational tragedy. It's about King Grayskull's pure, heroic legacy being split down the middle. One side of the family, Miro, Randor, Adam, and Adora, inherited the light, the crown, and the responsibility of protection. The other side, Keldor, twisted by rejection, dark magic, and Saryn's ambition, became a literal monster, passing that toxic trauma down to Evil-Lyn and Skele-teen. Every time He-Man and Skeletor cross swords, they aren't just fighting for the universe. They are fighting out the unresolved issues of a broken family that started thousands of years ago. But hey, I want to hear from you guys. Did you know that Skeletor was actually He-Man's uncle? Or did the whole comic book backstory with Saryn and Skele-teen blow your mind today? Which piece of the lore is your favorite? Drop a comment down below and let me know. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Eternian history, do me a huge favor. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell so you never miss out when we break down our favorite fictional universes. Thank you so much for watching. You rock. And as always, until next time.
Now what the heck, I'll laugh anyway.